6:30. We have a quorum, so let's get started. I will make, bear with me. As town administrator also has requested that he go first tonight, all right, because of another particular meeting that's requested to attend. So I'd like to.
We're going to the meeting.
We're called out again, once again, so everyone knows, we are being recorded. The camera, Mr. White and I have agreed upon the position of the camera. All right. Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Chairman, thank you to the members of the Finance Committee. Derek will walk through, you all have received electronically and seem to be killing more trees by doing more and more paper. I'm going to try to cut that back, Mr. Chairman, for obvious reasons. It's a copy machine and paper, so we started to walk out the door this evening. But we'll go over with you the year-to-date, particularly the August year-to-date revenue and expense reports. And what Derek has, I think, very efficiently done is put together an executive summary sheet, which is at the beginning of the reports, so that you can clearly see some of the things that we've done and some of the journal transactions that will be made to catch up various departments. I use one example. I believe it's on the August report. We purchased 100 plus cases of paper. Cases of paper very volatile. We bought it at the beginning of the fiscal year with the school district. We will apportion back to each department their respective shares of paper that we purchased, but for the time being, we get stuck in the administration, so not to worry. We're going to, once we apportion that back and use that charge back, we'll have made the adjustment in that particular line. In other lines, you'll see, and Derek will go through them, the work, sometimes setting up maintenance accounts at the beginning of the fiscal year. We put the full maintenance contract through, pay it through, so we're covered through the entire year. And he has the errata, so I'm going to turn it over to Derek. But you have to read the front page, I think, Mr. Chairman, just for you and the members and myself to understand, I think, better what is in the revenue and expense reports. And I turn it over to Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan?
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I feel we should probably go on to the August one. That's going on.
Is it cumulative?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's sure.
So if you've, in the July, I'm sure you've read over the cover sheet there. That gave some of the explanations of the variances. Moving on to August, you'll see that what you received electronically is the same as what was given to the selectmen last night. We do have the updates in there with the updated budgets, and to be blunt, there's no reason you should get reports that don't have the correct data in there the first time. So I apologize for the budget lines there, but this is something new, and with working with Ted from Vadar, who was excellent in his response, this should be going forward as a smooth monthly report for you. So I think we're all excited about that. As we go through the memo, the first part is the Harbor Master account there, and you'll see that a little over $6,700 was spent out of the Harbor Master improvement lines. And I spoke to Gary Buckminster, and he said that should be funded from the Harbor Master Service permit fee. So when we looked at his expense account, it was trending higher for the year than it should have. So realistically, that should be an adjustment there that will hit their Harbor Service permit fees, or those monies will be pulled in. I was speaking to Judy on that one. Municipal maintenance town building, I think we all realize what happened in August is that we had the tropical storm Irene, and there was a lot of cleanup. They hired independent contractors to do that, as well as their own crews working nonstop, for which I believe everybody figured they did a very good job on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add a footnote, excuse me, Derek. We were one of the first communities to submit our emergency response forms to the state and federal government. It's well over $300,000 and get a breakdown for the committee next time around, but approximately $125,000 is out of municipal maintenance. All the other items pertain to public safety, emergency response, whether it be from police department and/or emergency medical services.
Right.
Sorry about that.
And one of the other items is the beach and the lifeguard program. If we're taking that on a 12-month, breaking that into 12-month segments, doesn't really work. We all know that July, August, and June are realistically the numbers where we're spending money out of there. So at their current amount, which I believe was 60% of their budget or so, I don't have it written down. They're still trending, they're still trending well within budget for them to start up in June and go through June 30th till the next fiscal year.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could you, when you budget these numbers for the lifeguards, do you plug them in specifically in June, July, and August, or do you just put them in as a yearly expense?
They're put in as a yearly expense.
Can you realistically, plug them into like July and August and June, which, a history of, that way the budget is more realistic and it saves you on the explanations? I mean, that's what I used to do. I'm just wondering if you can do it in municipal, your municipal software. I wasn't sure if you could.
I can ask Vadar, the people from
Because
Vadar,
I
if
always-
that's something.
When I did payroll, I always looked at the months that had 5 weeks, and every, that way I wasn't running a variance, and I didn't know if you had the ability to do that.
Yeah.
If may, we could ask that question, as you know, it's front loaded, obviously, July, August, and then May, June. So
Sure.
first quarter, fourth quarter.
I understand.
So obviously, it's an encumbrance
I
in the
understand.
future. But it's a great question, Donna. We will try to find it, see if we can get that so
Okay.
that it's adjusted.
The chair's very much in agreement with that practice, but I'd like to get the reports down consistent, et cetera, before we do that.
Say again?
I said I'm in agreement with what
Oh,
she's saying,
yeah.
but I'd like to get the reports consistent.
Okay,
Once we have that, we can start talking about how to trend it, particularly in the budget process.
sure.
All right, we might want to talk about when we sit through the budget, we may ask, we could ask the department heads to show you their expense curves so that we could understand at that point and possibly put it into the FY13 budget that way.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, that was my hope as well, because I know the Liaisons would have been meeting with departments Gary Buckmans would tell you that obviously we put 20 lifeguards on in late May, or I should say mid-May, ramping up to mid-May, June, closing down fiscal 11, and then we've got obviously the complement of full guard activity from July and August, and early September we close down, so.
So I'm agreeing with Mr. Bronco, I'm just saying, can we stabilize the patient first?
No, I understand. I was
And
just.
then, but for Bryson, I think it's great.
Good question.
Mhm.
Fabulous.
Good question.
All right.
So,
And then as we continue on, please, the health insurance, I'm sure everybody's looked at that line item, and you'll notice that it's the zeros in there. We're not that lucky that it hasn't cost us anything, but there's a lag on there, and as soon as that data's in there, they'll be able to pull it over, and we'll see that in the report. And the final thing would be on the revenue section, I believe it's the last page on your report, the back side there, for the revenue budget actual. You'll see number 17, transfers in from other funds. If you look under the fiscal year 2011 column, you'll see an amount of about $550,825. In the center column, I believe it's, you have in the revenue budget to actual, page 2 of 2.
Page 2, it's not 2 of 8?
Very last page.
Sorry.
Back.
So the center column, fiscal year 2011, if you go down to then number 17, you'll see transfers in from other funds. And you'll see a number for 2011, $550,825. And you'd see 0 for this year. We're not in a lot of trouble. That's a time variance. Most of that's the water pollution control facility admin fee that's going to be brought over right there in the amount of $462,225, I believe.
Committee members have any questions?
Looks like we're getting there.
Ronald, any questions?
My brain is, my brain is out loud sometimes.
I wasn't sure what to do.
One question, let me start on the sheriff's side. One of the questions I have is on the police department. We're running about, if we used an 8% per month guideline, 8 and a third, we're about 3% over. Do we expect that to continue, or what are the reasons over those 2 months that we would be high?
One of the main reasons, especially for their salary, the regular salary line item, there was 215,000 and some change there, which was a settlement. Actually should have been put towards the settlement line, but it was put onto their salary. When that's backed out, you would see that their regular salary expenditures would actually be trending in a positive direction at about 5%, and their whole department would be in a positive direction at 1.11%.
So they would have been underspent by 5%?
Yes.
Do we know on a monthly basis what the salary number is, the average salary number, not including overtime or anything?
If we did their average for their 2 month right now would be $506,391. What their true regular salary during that time has been $566,218.
So they spend roughly $250 a month in straight salary.
Correct.
All right, and do we have any idea as far as how overtime works out? I understand it can fluctuate from month to month. Do we have an average?
Overtime can fluctuate from month to month. Their average on a 2 month is $78,176. So it'd be $39,088 for 1 month. Their overtime was higher through August than what it would be as a 12-month breakdown by $9,000, $9,600 almost. They're at $87,747. I spoke to the chief about that. He did say that during the summer months they do run a higher amount of the overtime. So if we looked at that, it's trending in a negative at 2.04% that they'd be overspending on there. He's seen it. He says he plans for it now to go down into the opposite direction back until the summer ramps up. So,
Okay.
what I think would be one of the good things is seeing when we get September and the October is seeing what direction we're heading in then. But we have spoken to him, just making sure that he's aware of it as well.
Is the overtime number inclusive of details?
Yes. Yes,
It is?
It is.
Okay, so somebody contracts a detail and
that's correct.
right,
In fact,
it's charged, and then their payment comes through general fund?
Special account set up that would hopefully be collected before the detail is actually deployed, is where we're heading, which is different from where we have been in the past, where some of the funds for details were fronted by the department, and then we would have to go and invoice the private contractor and collect the funds. We're trying to reverse that trend and go 2 weeks in advance for payment, at least advance payment, so we can collect the money, put it in the account, pay for the detail.
So road details, et cetera, in any given month that were unexpected could cause an increase over and above what we might have anticipated on average?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
thank
also,
you.
just one footnote, excuse me 1 second. The chief's commitment here is that we brought in 5 cadets. We did lose 1 to the state police, which is probably a good sign. We put a very good trooper, if you will, through the process, and unfortunately the state remuneration is a lot higher than what we can offer at the town level. But the 4 new cadets and the 2 transfers from Falmouth are going to help us bring that number down, because what the police department had been facing is an understaffing for the shifts and the work details that the chief had. Now with the new cadets in place, it should bring the overtime down to moderate down to a low level, which is what Derek was talking about.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mrs. Brown?
could I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
First of all, on the police detail fund, when we bill it in the overtime, obviously you explained that.
Sure.
is there a line item does that go back, the incomes go back into the salary?
That's correct.
So this is over and above what we've already paid, that we've received in for them, okay?
That's correct.
And my second question is, we have the new cadets, they're now working. Can we, how long have they been working on the police force? And can we take a month last year and a month this year and look at, basically what the difference is having the new cadets on the overtime basis? I'm just trying to see how much overtime we're really saving. Are we saving? It'd be nice to know, wouldn't it? Analytically.
Gentleman's question, Mr. Chairman, through you. You have to let that process unfold, because really for the months of July, August, and September, which we haven't got to yet, you're going to see additional costs because you had new cadets serving with experienced patrolmen and actually doubling up in vehicles, so that you get that real work experience, if you will, on the beat. So I would say probably sometime mid-year we could take a look and see how that looks. Maybe look at December, January.
Are you talking about after they stop?
Yeah, after that clears up,
After that
plus or
clears up.
minus one new cadet, which we have to go back and find another person. But after that clears out, because really what you're doing is you're doubling up your expenses, because you got a full-time police officer who's leading the way for a cadet
Right.
in the same vehicle. That's part of the standard procedure for that.
Good. Yeah. Mr. McDonald,
You forgot my name.
I forgot your name.
Through you. Help me out here. Maybe it's just that my eyes are bad. We talked about this last week. There were 2 contracts that recently settled. I believe it was the dispatchers and maybe the municipal maintenance. Where are they in this number? Are they going to be part of the overall number, or they have it? We supposedly put it aside. So where are they going to appear on here?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. McDonald, it's not supposedly. We set up a reserve fund for collective bargaining.
Well, okay, sorry.
I just want to make sure
I
it's clear.
apologize.
No, that's okay. Town meeting has to vote on that. Hopefully this committee will vote to move that process forward for both the laborers and the dispatchers. Then the money would come out of the reserve and be apportioned to the lines for the departments. So municipal maintenance workers would get a portion of that amount as a retro check, and the dispatchers in the police department would get a check, if you will, an amount that would be due to them.
I'm sorry, and I understand that, but when I'm looking at the budget, because when we put a portion aside and when we voted on it, it was supposedly stuck out here somewhere for the 2012 budget, so that it should be on here in one of these numbers on the budget. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to do is locate it. Is it in the individual places, like in the case of the municipal maintenance, it would be in the municipal maintenance department. In the case of the dispatchers, it would be in the police department, under the budget item. I know how the actual works, but I'm trying to figure out where that number is, that $100 and something thousand. That's what I'm looking for.
It's about $80,000 in the account, and we get your report on that. It's a separate, standalone reserve account.
Like a balance sheet, is what you're...
It was an article that was passed as a reserve. Okay?
Mr. Sullivan, you address the issue.
Thank you.
Because there's a slight problem with the reports. They're not fully
Help me
complete.
out.
They're not fully complete yet.
So if you thought that that would be brought over as an encumbered amount, it's not on there yet. And where that money is right now is in the account where it has been voted into. So it's into a separate reserve account. And what's going to happen, as soon as that gets voted on, we'll be able to pull that and move that number over, and you'll be able to see it there. But I physically can't go in there and do it.
Well, now here's
Okay,
the old...
If I may, because I've had some follow-up in this as well. The budget these reports here are missing part of the budget, correct? They're missing the offsets for the state, and they're missing the FY12 articles, et cetera, where those
Correct.
numbers would show.
There we go.
All right, this number right now is
Sorry.
totaling 47 million, should be totaling 51 million. All right, they have not been picked up, and the reason for that, this was not off the general ledger. There actually is the maintenance that Derek has to do to get the reports out of Vadar And this was all new, a big surprise, he tells me, all right, when I first learned of it. And they had a problem, they fixed the problem in 24 hours, but the other still remains to bring those pieces over, which he has assured me he definitely will have in place by next month.
I understand how the actual side of it works. I was just trying to figure out where it was at in the budget, and if the articles haven't made it into the budget for 2012, then that's why I don't see it out there as, that's what I was asking. Sorry.
It's in the system, but it's not on this report.
It ain't there, right?
It ain't there,
That's all.
but it will be.
That's all, that's the answer.
Sometimes it makes sense to me in my head, but when it spits out the words, it doesn't always.
And I assure you, he has proved to me that the amounts balance.
And thank you for recapping, because, you know, I did understand it, but you did a good job of explaining how it works. Both of you did a good job of explaining how it works, but I was just looking for the budget number over here. That's all.
An item that was in July, I hope everyone was aware of it, is that the legal was overstated because of the settlement for the town accountant, which also will be moved
Yeah, I saw
subsequent as soon as those come up. So let's not forget that as well. Okay, any other questions on the reports? Mrs. Brunk?
No.
We're all
I just need
we're all
to
set?
excuse myself.
Okay. Also on the town administrator side, the healthcare plan and the receivable sales. I put both of those on the agenda, more or less. I have to report that I have not as yet sent a note to Mr. Cruz. I have discussed with the town administrator having both our healthcare consultant and the gentleman who may receive the proposal to come in and talk to us after the town meeting. I felt with the town meeting coming up, this was not urgent, but I wanted to make sure it was still on our agenda. If anyone has any comments. Mr. Pickett, you asked me about which chapter. I sent out later today the slide presentation that was made by the gentleman who made the receivables, and you received that based on chapter 2C. Okay, everybody should also have received that. Derek did forward to me the slide presentation. I did send it out to everyone. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I want to apologize to you, to Attorney Pritchett, that we intended to get this off to you the next day, the citation, and then we said, you know, we'll send the whole PowerPoint so people have it.
The word Sammy. Sorry, I'm late.
And Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that it is a routine that the administration does assist with bringing in Ginger Hastings from JBS.
Yes.
And Mr. fellow from Scotland School, we knew, but they both expressed an interest in coming to talk with the committee.
That would be fine, excellent thing, and I'll formalize it to all the reports.
Sure.
Do that. Meeting done. Before you leave, which I know you're anxious to leave, under town meeting matters, the question of Article 1 comes up. I have to admit, I'm thoroughly confused, so I would ask the town moderator if you could help us out with how the article will be presented.
Come on down.
What, do I get to pick a door?
You do. Maggie Hall.
In Article 1, my intent is to handle this as we would do when we have the annual budget, and to, at the outset, take each line item individually and ask if anyone wishes to discuss any line item A, B, C, D, E, F, G to ask for a hold. I anticipate that every single one of them will have a hold to them. I don't expect that there would not be a discussion on any of them. And so we would take, for example, go back to, after going through all of them, go back to A, defibrillators, and then allow for questions and discussion on that one. Allow for a motion, take a vote. Because I'm sure there may be amendments to each separate line item, and then go to the next one, A, B, C, and D. So to act on them individually.
Okay, there is the question on the wording, borrow versus raise funds and appropriate. All right, borrow requires a 2/3 vote, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the motions need to properly reflect whether it's a borrowing or whether it's an effort to take funds from other locations.
Correct.
And that will be ready for the town meeting, correct?
Right, I believe Mr. Sullivan is conferring with DOR just to make sure that we have the motions correctly and how to do this, and that it's agreeable both to DOR and bond council.
You're always so wonderfully organized. Mr. McDonald?
So each individual item will have, whether, I mean, and I was just looking to see, my brain's not working again tonight, I've been saying that. I believe it was appropriate, raise, appropriate, borrow, transfer, so each one will have a separate, it may not be all three. And then that, whatever it is, if it's borrow, if it's appropriate, or whatever it is, that will be locked into that method only, is that what you're saying? Okay, I was just confused.
Right, and the verbiage will determine the vote that's required.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Gregg?
Might it be more than one, or will there only be one method for each?
We're still waiting to hear back from DOR and bond council as to how Article 1 and I believe Article 10 from the water pollution control, we just want to make sure that under the enterprise fund as well, that the motion is correct and that it's being taken from the correct account. So we're still waiting to hear back, I believe, from bond council and DOR.
Anyone else have any other questions? Thank you, Mrs.
So where is the Thunderbird, which door?
What a trip to
Mr.
Hawaii.
Andrews, if we could move to
Sure.
on the status of articles 4 through 9.
Yes.
All right, the committee's taking no vote on any article at this point.
Yeah, I'll just provide the overview. Derek's gonna know. This is an internal work paper. I would ask you to keep this. It's a summary of what is in each of the collective bargaining agreements, and we've talked about this in the past.
Take one, that's it.
I'd rather just have my electronic copy because that's scary.
I got you. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
That's scary.
Please,
There's a lot of paper.
I don't want to.
moving right along.
No, I don't want to.
So, Mr. Chairman, it goes something like this. When I was first put on the contract, I was directed by the Board of Selectmen to look at all of the outstanding collective bargaining issues for the town, find ways to put some closure to them. And two of the areas that kind of stuck out with the board in the direction to me were, one, something called sick leave buyback. In some towns, sick leave buyback and it's vacation buyback. And it says, the moderator said, what's behind door number 3 and whatever. It really is a labor gimmick, in my opinion, that provides a yearly incentive. It doesn't go into the base pay of any of the employees. It's an amount that comes to them via whatever amount of sick time they have over a certain amount, depending upon their collective bargaining agreement. The board instructed me to reduce that. You can see through this worksheet that we have endeavored to do that. We've brought that down annually from about $135,000–$140,000 to about half of that right about now. And so that's what you see as a key ingredient in both of these contracts, and item number 1 and, item number 2 for one of the agreements, and actually both item 2 and 3 respectively, from laborers to the dispatchers. On the monetary side, you talk to people, if you go back and talk, as I have, and work very closely with town administrators, town managers, we are right in the ballpark. In fact, if you picked up the newspaper, what the Social Security increase would amount to is pretty much what we've agreed to for wage increases for the respective employees in these units. And we talked with them about trying to get, because what will happen is that if you have things like sick leave buyback or vacation buyback in contracts, you're having instant gratification. Ironically, the check would come out just around Christmas time for whatever reason. I'm not drawing any conclusions, but I'll leave it to your imagination. So to get those dollars into their base pay was something that I thought was a very noble obligation to try to get them. So when they do retire, go on to other service, they will have had the income for their service, at least in their for their credible service, in their wages, in their lines. The second area, even before the state decided to work on something called municipal health reform locally, we have had every agreement that has been reached, and this will bring us respectively, I believe, to 7 at this particular juncture, with 3 outstanding. What can we do to get up to speed with regards to healthcare and healthcare reform. So copay is going from $5 to $15, emergency room visits from $25 to $75. You've heard me talk about this for a long time now. A lot of people use the emergency room as their personal care physician outlet. They go there, they show up, and it's about 10 times as much of the cost if you waited to see your personal care physician the next day. What we did do was, so we got the co-pays up to where we wanted to move them up to, and then on both agreements, one of the things that, once again, we thought was important, I know was important, that we would reimburse for inpatient and outpatient co-pays on plans. So if people actually took stock and looked at their bill and actually checked it off line by line as to what they received for care, whether it be inpatient, outpatient care, they would have received, or through whatever that time that they spent, they would then bring that in and a copy of the canceled check for that, and we would reimburse them for both the inpatient and outpatient, getting closer to more cost containment at those two levels of service for healthcare. So as you can see, and we had a lot of catch-up. You can see these agreements go back to fiscal 2007, I should say July 1st, 2007, and you can see what we worked into the plans that have been proposed for settlement with the dispatchers who are at the police department and the laborers at the municipal maintenance department, respectively. So that's an overview of where things stand. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
These apply to Articles 4 and Article 9.
Four,
4 is Wareham, this is the dispatchers union,
yeah.
and
This one is
Six.
custodial, right?
the
Yep.
6, number 6.
That's correct. I had my cut sheet or something, so.
All right, the chair would entertain favorable action on Article 4.
So moved.
Second.
And second, Mr. Gray. Discussion?
I don't know how much of a question it actually is towards these. I do commend you on saving up some money, but on the sick leave buyback, that just doesn't sit well with me. I know I commend you for cutting it down, but I mean, aren't people gonna like go to work sick to save these days, make other, I don't know, just something it's nothing that you did, just something that sticks in my craw, that's all. It really bothers me, I don't know.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
know you cut it in half, and that's great, that's a great job, but it's just something that I don't even think should be in any type of agreement. I think it's nothing but a big gap. I just want to put my 2 cents in, that's all.
I agree, and through you to Dominic, we're working it down, we're gonna whittle it down, hopefully the next negotiation's down to 0.
Yeah.
By the way, these agreements will bring us up through fiscal 2011, so we're in fiscal 2012. It's probably the closest we've been in a decade to having all these agreements settled. And the other thing too, just so the edification of the committee, if these agreements are not settled and funded, they will wind up as a asterisk, as a liability on our financial statements. You just can't, years ago when I worked at the State House, the state had a great budget, $10 million budget, but it had a $14 billion outstanding pension liability. So, those types of asterisks, I think people want to get closer to it, and thank you for your comment on that.
Mr.
So
McCollum?
this actually brings the agreement up to 2011,
That's correct.
and we're in 2012, so we're already back to negotiating the next one.
You remember,
Wow.
yeah. So remember the road runner in that
Yeah.
cartoon? So we're trying to run and then stop and then settle.
Okay.
By the way, just for the further edification of the committee, you cannot sign more than a 3-year agreement under Chapter 115 of the Massachusetts General Laws. So you only can work in 3-year increments. So we're working to hopefully settle 12, 13, and 14, and then take a breather, and then say, okay, let's see where things go from here. We actually have been caught up and get ahead of the game.
One other question through you, John. Mark, how's it been, the unions have crippled the country over the time. How's it to work with them now as far as concessions, the unions? Is it easier than it was, do you think?
A couple of things. There's a battle that is raging that you should know about, and if you haven't looked at it, there's a Supreme Court judicial decision that said that once the contracts have ended, there used to be something called the evergreen clause that allowed contracts to go into, you could have outstanding contracts for as much time as you wanted.
Okay.
And then the provisions of the contract stayed in place. So that didn't help cities and towns negotiate and be in a firm position to say to unions.
Because they kept the old contract, it didn't go away, I see, okay.
Well, there's no power to negotiate. But now the Supreme Court said that, wait a minute, the contract's over, so you really have to get back to the table and start to talk to. Now, some things might happen in the legislature from what I understand as I make my way around Beacon Hill regarding that. But the idea is just to show them that we have good intention, we tell them right up front that we want sick leave buyback to be cut down to zero, we want better participation with healthcare, and they have done that once they understood it, because I think it's a very complex area of negotiation. But I think they were also picked up working with our new legal team, with Rich Bowen and Bob Garrett, that we're serious and we will entertain, we increased, we put a vision clause in for the laborers to provide up to $100 for not to exceed $100 per year. If you wear glasses and you're working cutting trees, limbs during Hurricane Irene, you probably need a good pair of safety glasses. And it's worthwhile because if a chip flies into somebody's eye and they're out of work for a week or two, we lose. The town is behind the 8 ball because we don't have that worker already shorted in that area that we would necessarily have to have. So I think we've shown good give and take, and I think it's important that they feel that it's a two-way street, but that there's certain things that we want to secure in the contract. And if you talk to people, as I have once again up and down the South Coast, we're right in the ballpark, if not below the ballpark, with respect to the wage piece, because a lot of cities and towns have been caught up to speed where we were behind the 8 ball trying to get caught up with these outstanding contracts.
Frank, one other question through you.
Sure.
Did you earlier say, what was the actual savings on these contracts? Is that something you said earlier? Did you figure out what you actually, in other words, the 07 contract till now, what was the savings? Is that something you can calculate or no?
We haven't done the calculation, like on the healthcare piece, we want to see it in effect for at least...
On overall, like the dispatches you need, what did we save on that contract from before? Was there an actual savings?
I don't know if I want to get into what they were asking for or what we got. I think that, I don't want to...
No, I didn't mean it that way. I meant from the old to the new. There's something you can't discuss.
I prefer not.
Okay, that's okay. I can live with that. No problem.
Food?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this, the paragraph here on the, it says the 300-day cap on sick leave buyback, was that new or had there been a cap before?
Why, which are you running this later? I'm just trying to...
Page 2, dispatches union, second paragraph. Each member may, starts off not. Second page of the Wareham dispatches union.
The second?
Yeah, second page.
On the second page is a description of the, it's at the top of the page, so each member making sure it's like
Yeah,
Yeah, it's on the sick leave.
1 day per
bank,
year,
not the
preserve
buyback.
accumulated sick leave to the sick leave bank.
Yeah,
Which
that one right there in ink. I got you covered, buddy.
We will, I remember it, and we wanted to make sure that we had language. No, that's a sick leave bank.
Okay.
So that pertains to, through you, Mr. Chairman, Bonnie, that pertains to the accumulated sick leave that they can bank. And it takes, there's a committee that would actually vote if there's a person who's in need of participation in the sick leave bank for some type of ailment that they have, or illness that they would have, that they would voluntarily contribute to this bank each year and keep it. And it takes a vote of a 3-person body to get the amount of time that would be needed for that person to be out on sick leave.
Well, that was my question, is this a new thing? Because I know before we had, they had so much sick time
Yeah.
that, it was accumulating and it was rolling over year after year after year.
Right.
And then it was like, oh gee, I'm short cash, let me buy this all out.
Right.
And that was hitting us rather hard. I was just curious if this was something new where we were capping it at 300.
You You are correct, this did cap it, and it provided clarification of the language that we,
All right.
from prior agreement.
But the 300 is for multiple employees, correct?
That's
It's
correct.
all in that particular local?
That's correct.
And then they decide if somebody has a long-term need, they can use part of their bank to,
They petition me,
Right.
and there's a sick leave bank committee that would sit and say, is it a legitimate request, and then it would be taken from the bank and portioned to the employee.
right, is any portion of these 300 days treated like the sick leave buyback is?
No,
So this never converts to cash unless an employee needs the benefit because they're out for extended illness?
it only converts the time that would be in need by the employee. It doesn't ever
No
convert to
cash
cash.
at all.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
There's no cash behind door number 2 here.
okay. Does that help on?
Yes, thank
Sorry.
you.
Any other questions?
I was just gonna draw a comparison, is it more like
Okay.
a temporary disability insurance situation that they get the sick leave bank rather than like an insurance company, like temporary disability, that's the
Sure.
comparison here.
That's correct.
It's not really like that they're buying that time out of it, they get.
Right, and their employees are saying, their representation at their table, one of the employees sits and says, yes, this is a legitimate request for some type of long-term disability or recurring illness that they might have.
I would like to ask a question to show my nativity, I guess. Do employees have short-term disability, or is this the vehicle for dealing with short-term?
This is you would use up whatever sick time you have, or you would use up, or you could potentially be extended to family medical leave, if that is the case, if that can be attained. And then if you run out of any and all sick days that you have, and you still need time away for treatment or whatever, then you would petition to have use of these days.
The next step after the sick bank is that long-term disability?
Yes,
So where businesses have both short and long-term, the town only has long-term, and the union has the bank to fill in the gap.
that's correct.
Thank you.
That's a good way to put it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good.
So,
Mr. McDonald?
do you, so it's not like a cafeteria plan where they're signing up for things and they can choose to have short-term or long-term under that cafeteria plan? It's
No.
Insurance, okay, that's what I was curious about.
Very informative.
Hope it helps, and once again, there's 2 more out of the way. If I could respectfully ask for your consideration favorably on this item, to get it through and hopefully be able to wrap up the other agreements and go on from there.
I do have one last question, and it has to do with the co-pays. We do reimburse the co-pays. What happens if, what are the conditions of reimbursement on the co-pay? They just submit the bill, or are there other conditions,
Well,
or?
they need to submit the bill and initial it and return a canceled check that they actually paid for their copay, and that they had some cognitive review of the bill.
So they've reviewed the bill for potential savings. Do we find instances where we go back to the healthcare provider based on the employee's statement and claim and ask for reductions?
This is where we're going, exactly.
This is where we're going. Okay, fine. Makes sense.
Okay.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I hope that concludes, if I may excuse myself, to another hearing.
All right, we still have another article. It'll be real quick.
Okay.
All right, any further questions on this particular article?
Did you make a motion?
Although, we already have the motions for favorable action. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One, abstentions?
No, I voted no.
610 is the vote. Go to Article 6.
Same thing.
Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action on Article 6. So moved.
Second.
Second, discussion. Actually, the chair made a mistake, forgot to ask the amount of money on number 4.
42 and change.
Yes, I've heard that before, that's why I didn't ask, unfortunately. Article 6 would be, what would the dollar value on that be?
42,000 and change. Do we have that, Tom?
It's in the article itself that you have.
It's in the,
I'm sorry,
warrant.
40,000, 40,237, I had it on here, it's 42,000.
And Article number 6 would be, how much?
Well, $40,237.
That was Article 6, they just gave you 40,000, and you're looking for Article.
Article 4 would be,
$19,700.
so,
So,
all right, return to Article 6.
$19,712.
so 6 is 40,000.
Yeah.
4 is 19.
Did we get the motion, who made the motion? Did I take a Okay, any discussion on Article 6, which is for the municipal maintenance workers? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 610. I believe that's Mr. Andrews. Thank you very much.
Is that, thank you.
You going next door, Mike?
Yeah.
I wouldn't wanna go over there. I wouldn't wanna be in that room for all night, Jay, right now. You're waiting outside to get in there.
Oh, no.
I'm
They
telling
had
you right now.
bats, sticks, it's crazy.
I wouldn't wanna go over there.
Thank you.
I'd like to return to the
Thank you, Larry, for that comment.
Oh, nitrogen is always a big topic in Wareham.
I'd like to return to the top of the agenda, citizens' participation. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak for the committee? Oh, you're moving on. All right, seeing none, move to approval of the meeting minutes for October 12th.
Make a motion to accept.
A motion to accept, do we have a second? Second by Mrs. Pickett. So sorry, couldn't say the Pickett. Anyone have any corrections, additions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 700. Moving on back to the town meeting matters, reconsiderations, the moderator's preview. I think I was the only one who attended the moderator's preview.
I'm sorry?
I think I was the only one who attended your preview. The preview went very, very well. By the way, I commend the moderator again. It went very smooth. There was only really one major conversation, which I think was covered well in the media, which had to do with Bay Point, but other than that, everything seemed to go very, very smoothly. So, and it was, I think, reasonably well attended. No worse than it has been in the past, no better than it has been in the past. Reconsiderations, are there any articles that anyone feels that we should reconsider for any reason? We are on record as having no vote for those articles on the contracts that will be withdrawn, so there's no reason to vote all the way on those.
Well, and just a question, because there was an article, I believe, the Affordable Housing Trust, did we ever find out how they voted on that article? They did withdraw it, or did they not? If they did withdraw it, okay, that's that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it was
So
on,
maybe we want to consider voting no vote on that. Can we, is it,
well, it's already stated in the record. I think we could just leave it, and it won't be requested as to our vote because of the article will be
Okay.
withdrawn. And we did oppose it as written, so
yes,
I guess we voted the right way.
I thought we did.
Okay. Any other articles, Mr. Paulson?
Money articles.
Just a question, and perhaps Bonnie can answer this. On the issue of the parking, where the community affairs would get 40% of the proceeds, it seems to me that that's going to create a problem. Because, as I see it, if we start to give 40% of, what was that, $200,000,
Yeah, decent money, yeah.
it's going to be a fair amount of money. And then to go back and get, after the fact, take the money away, not that money away, but to change the formula and go through the state to do it. You know, what's your sense of how that might work on that?
You know, I actually, Mr. Chairman, if I
Answer the
might
question.
respond. I spoke to the chairman of the CEC on that privately, and she understands as far as the, we go forward with this parking plan, that's going to increase revenue, all right? But then it has to be looked at realistically of, there's this, parking meter system that's going to need maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. It will have expenses charged to that. There's no doubt about that. So it has to be taken care of by the administration as to how they want to handle that. It only makes good business sense to take care of that overhead before you do any profit splitting. I mean, that has to be reasonable. I'm not exactly sure how the accounting process went with the parking meter fund prior to that. I mean, that's something you'd have to take up with the accountant's office, I suppose. I'm sure not all the revenue just went in. I mean, let's face it, when the police department ran the parking meter fund, they had expenses. So his expenses came out first, and whatever profit went into that parking meter fund. I don't see this being any different. My only thing is that, there was talk about using those funds for improvements on the pier and things like that. And those are things that would have to go through town meeting anyway before we could expend that kind of money. So I think that to say, well, it's the Onset Pier and it's the Onset Pier parking meter fund, therefore it ought to pay for these expenses first before the CEC gets their portion. I think that's something that the town administrator is going to have to work on. He's going to have to get through town meeting first. The way I understand the legislative action is written for CEC is that is the split, okay? Whether it's an internal day-to-day thing that he has to figure out, do you take those expenses out first? I think that that's a plan that the town administrator is going to have to come up with and be clear about in his presentation for this parking meter fund. It's not something I've had a chance to pin down and discuss with him, but I think he definitely needs to be prepared to explain that to everyone, because it is a bit of a gray area, and I understand you questioning that.
Don?
Mike, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's what Dick means. I think what Dick was trying to get at, maybe I'm wrong, Dick, was that it's gonna be a lot more money than your organization ever got. In other words, it could be $100,000, 40%, before you were getting chump change. See, so does CEC get $100,000 by the 40%, or is it something the town is gonna do? Is that what you meant, Dick, more than the maintenance?
I was looking forward to fireworks every night.
Yeah.
Not just here.
Multi-million-dollar.
Mr. McDonald, I'm sorry.
What
Let Don finish.
was your question, more than just maintenance?
No. But if I might just elaborate, just Hammond School, or the school up there, that's not part of Onset Pier, so therefore those revenues, I would think, would be separated.
The law does not say Onset Pier parking fund. It says the parking meter fund. That's what it says.
That's what it says, that's correctly.
I'm gonna
exactly
say
what it
that.
says.
I'm gonna group it all together.
I still stand by kind of my question, though, maybe we should be thinking, I'm thinking that I would change I'm probably going to stand at the town meeting and change my opinion on this, as much as I like the idea, because I can foresee significant problems going forward unless we reach an accommodation with the Finance Committee, and then also work to get the law changed.
Exactly.
Because if we vote this ahead of time, and I know we have voted this in our committee, but if we vote at town meeting, as nice as it sounds, as attractive as it sounds, there's going to be I believe, a significant problem going forward.
Mr. McDonald?
That's why I voted against it originally. I think it's a great plan, and I think it's something we need to do, but we need to address the revenue issue on the inside as soon as. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't get an increase in the money they're getting, but that money needs to be directed towards revenue in the town. And that was my reason for voting against it. We need to address the end product, not just, wow, we're gonna make a lot of money. Well, who's making a lot of money is the issue we really need to address. So that's why I voted against it originally.
I can understand people saying, wow, this thing's gonna make a lot of money, and, there are other things in this town that we need, that we could use OPEB's funds on, and I don't disagree with you. But it would have to take a repeal of the legislative action to get that into effect. Well, I don't know if you want to put the cart before the horse or whatever. Personally, to shut this down, that's going to bring revenue in because you might have problems later on, is something I think we can work out. I don't think that we put a hold on it because we don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. Because then we're just going to lose come June around again when that thing's cranking out money and those meters aren't there. we're just gonna be losing one more year.
I agree.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we could change the name of, make an amendment on the floor to change the name of the, from the parking meter fund in some way to reflect the fact that the monies are going to be handled differently than through the parking meter fund.
Yeah, that would be tough at town meeting. I think the thing in the process of doing the budget going forward, et cetera, we should get the legal opinion as to what it would take to modify it, whether or not the funds could be capped. I mean, there's a number of options available. The key thing right now is if it isn't voted in, if we don't have it, all right, then the upper lot remains for free, and there has been some discussions that we have another area that's down in Onset which could be paved and additional funds could be drawn out. It's been recognized that there is a problem with the amount of flow, all right, that would be headed into the community events. But I think those are issues that could be addressed down the road. Is there a possibility that somebody may object? That may be true, but town meeting has the final say. So, you know. Does anyone wish to move for reconsideration, vote? No?
I won't, but I'm trying to make my feelings clear that I will speak against the vote that I took.
That's fine.
Not me before. I made a mistake.
No.
Again.
You object? You don't object to anything, do you, Dick?
I understand your concerns, Dick. The other problem too, though, is that we're never going to get the revenue off the ground waiting to get legislation through the state. We passed the sewer commissioner's bill a year ago, and it's still hung up in committee. So the question is how long do we wait before we do something with the parking revenues?
I agree.
In the meantime, we also could even do discussions as to whether the committee holds money in reserves, all right, to use for other potential growth in parking, et cetera. There's a lot of things that I think could happen in the interim, all right, that would still allow this bill to go through. Not putting it through says that we're just going to watch money go just going to float away somewhere else.
Frank, is there any way that through you to everybody, you could cap it? Community preservation gets 41% until they reach a limit.
I don't think the town could, but I think the committee itself could. And there's other questions that come up involved as well. The question is do the merchants, many times in these types of things, the merchants are able to have free parking situations, et cetera, to generate commerce, et cetera. There's a lot of legalities here that have to be examined, et cetera. You know, it's a great idea to put the parking in there, but there's going to be a lot of things that are going to have to be considered changing the monies going forward.
Yeah. Well, let's just get the money.
That's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any?
I'm sorry if I might ask, the vote on this was 4-3-0. Who were the three that voted against it? If you have that there, Kelly?
I would have to look back in the minutes.
I know, I voted against it.
I think Donna voted against it. I'm not 100% sure, Dick, but I think she
So there'd
did.
be a third vote that was against, and who would that been? Probably not me.
I'm not sure.
Could have been Donna.
I know Donna, I'm pretty sure Donna voted against it. I'm not 100%
Questions?
sure.
Academic, I won't take any more time on it, but I would change my vote, so couldn't carry any of that deal without Tom meeting.
I think I've voted. No, I think I've voted.
I can't remember.
Any other articles that anyone would wish to bring up this time? All right. I have scheduled a 6:15 meeting prior to town meeting, as always, in case one of these unusual items suddenly appears. It's in the auditorium. All right. Hopefully we won't need it.
Auditorium?
Not the auditorium. It's in the cafeteria.
Is that gonna cause a problem? We had a problem the last time.
If we do, then we can move it, but we'll
To the
post. I
library.
just want to make sure that it's posted.
Okay.
Okay, and then we don't have any problems. What I probably will do is we'll meet, open up, go into recess, all right, go to the meeting, and then afterwards, before everybody leaves, if there's a second night, we can leave it in recess, I believe. If it's over, please don't rush out until we just get together for 30 seconds to say motion to adjourn, that type of thing. But to not schedule it means if something comes up, we wouldn't be able to do anything before town meeting. I don't want to do that. Leave us open for that.
So there'd be refreshments and beverages.
You can bring anything you want for the rest of us.
I'll set up a table with the town meeting.
If you move out of
He's the
there,
new guy, he brings the gumballs.
if you move
Got any
out
fun?
of there,
Yes.
You want something?
would you leave word, I'm gonna be flying in from California that day, and I'll make the town meeting,
Right,
but it
no,
might
we'll,
be touch and go, so
if
if
we
you
move it, it usually goes to the libraries where it goes.
Okay.
Right, they're very good at opening up that. That's the easiest one for them to open. All right, I placed the FY13 budget on here again. You know, it's not that far away, folks.
No,
You know, we should discuss next Monday night when we want to meet next, and then there will be a short break, I would believe. Unless anybody, we are going to want to have the healthcare people and the receivables people in. So I'm looking at the month of November and saying that we'll probably have one meeting in the month of November. And then December and January, it's February, it's the usual nightmare. I'll try to get a list of tentative dates. Kelly's about ready to remind me of something. That's Kelly.
No, no one's laughing at what you said.
Remember, we anticipate that the capital plan and then the first budget will come to us on the 15th of December. Pardon?
Early Christmas present.
Early Christmas present, yes. Something for you to do over the holidays while you think you're on vacation. Liaison reports in capital planning, I don't see Mr. Fidel here, so I guess not. I do know after having attended the meeting that they are working on the 5-year plan, trying to draw it up completely. There will be some changes to that plan, and some might be significant. And it will be significantly downward, but we just don't have the final word on it yet. Anything from the school committee?
nothing from the school committee, but if I may talk about at some point the hiring of a new accountant and how that's going.
Excellent. And the other reports? I'll make you last because I want to make sure everybody has it firm in their memory. You're leaving. The associate, yes, Mr. I'm sorry.
The liaison reports,
Yes.
the library board has a full complement now, so that's a big plus for the library board. So now they have a fairly diverse group on that board now, so it should be interesting going forward as far as getting information.
Association of the Finance Committee's annual meeting. I don't mean to bore you, I did go to the session. It proved to be very good. The very first session happened to have the head of the Office of Finance and Administration for the state. They're the ones that are charged with writing the regulations for the new healthcare legislation. They have not completed that regulation writing at this point. They hope to have it done, they were saying October 31st or a couple of weeks there. The key message was that it's extremely detailed. If we decide to go and follow it in any way, there's this very, very set procedure that has to be followed. And I try to say, I think once we learn from our liaison how the plan works, et cetera, we should also discuss with the town administrator where the town's going. It is very detailed. A number of towns have gone to it. Generally, the larger municipalities and very large towns. The smaller people are pretty much staying with what they have, from what I heard, and the folks that I talked to. I also went to a session on bond rating, which was extremely informative. All right, and I understand that we have not bonded anything here in 2 years. One of the question that always comes up is that we have an A rating. What does that mean? One of the questions that was answered at that meeting was an A rating says that we will probably pay 40 to 50 basis points more than a AA rated, which is what the state is. And that's one of the reasons why you use the state bonds. We'll go to the state and borrow through them, because then we get the AA rating and we save the 40 to 50 basis points, which is 0.4 to 0.5%. Needless to say, things are tightening up. The two speakers that we had there were the gentleman who put the bond package together for Newton High School. He had a lot of comments, a lot of numerous comments. I get the impression he wasn't a major supporter, but he had all the knowledge on how to put the package together. The co-speaker was a woman who's been in finance committees for a number of years here in Massachusetts, who works for a bond company. And she went over in great detail as to what the bonds companies are looking for. I have her paperwork, I'll see if I can find some way to get it scanned, all right, and get it out to everyone. Inclusive in her information was also the schedules that her particular bond company uses to evaluate towns, how they look at their debt. And one of the ones I thought that was very, very interesting is they look not only at the total, but they look at the individual departments as well. Very fascinating way to come look at it. I've recommended to the administration that they also take a look at this document. Because one of the things it points out very nicely is if you've over-concentrated in one area versus other areas, etc. So, all in all, it was a pretty good session. They had some very good speakers. The one on internal controls, they had somebody from Bellingham who said, well, she does cash reconciliation on a daily basis. Every day at 2:30 in the afternoon, she spends an hour doing cash reconciliations, which everybody in the building said, that's nice, but where do you find the time? And we decided we had to do the fact that it was Bellingham. All right. She does it basically to make sure that everything is being posted to accounts correctly on a daily basis, which they have the time to do is the absolute best way. And at that point, they need no other, they don't need any internal auditors, et cetera, to make sure that everything's going to catch their problems early. The general consensus by everyone that was there was there were two things that are critically important to their towns. One is a monthly cash reconciliation be done, and second, that reports come to their finance committees. So we're not alone in making those demands. Most towns do receive them. So next year when they have the meeting, I would encourage people to go. Guest speaker was Michael Dukakis. It was very interesting. The last time I saw him was nose to nose in a bus on Huntington Avenue. All right, he's quite a speaker, still a liberal, still a big Democrat. Lots of positives and lots of negatives in his talk. So that's my report on that particular session. And like I said, if you can go in the future, it's a very good session. Most of the people who go are the new people, but there's also some people who have been around for a long time who can give us lots of background. Dick, you've been through these meetings before. The folks are excellent.
Yes.
Any other way? Yes, Dick.
Well, you talked, reconciliation came up in terms of the money. And I was out of the room, so this may have been touched on, I doubt it. We have the variance reports for July and August, which is wonderful. Do we have reconciliation or a variance report for the end of last fiscal year, June 30th?
Not to this point. He reported last night to the Board of Selectmen that they're very close to wrapping up on 10 and wrapping up on 11 and scheduling a meeting between the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the administration and the auditors.
Well, it's kind of a rhetorical question, I guess. If we have a report for the first 2 months of the fiscal year, it would seem to me, which documents the amount of money that was budgeted and the amount of money that was expended, which is the way it should be done. I would imagine that the same process was used last year, including and going through the end of the fiscal year, not June 30th. In other words, you had so much money that you were budgeted, and you spent so much money, month by month by month by month. If somebody were to say to me, well, we've got to wait for the audit for 210, that to me would be not a good answer, because 2011, which ended June 30th, stood by itself. Here's your budget, here's what you spent. I find it difficult to believe that the Finance Committee, and I'm a member obviously, is going to go into town meeting and say, we really don't know whether we were above or below. And yet we have it for July and August. But we don't have it for the end of last year. I would think the same kind of report should have been generated. The town administrator must know how much he was spending, how much he was budgeted. I can't envision it. And if he didn't know, then we have a very, very serious problem, more serious than I would anticipate. We're going to have a problem at town meetings if we don't have those figures. In my opinion, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And we've repeatedly asked for them. We sent a letter to the Board of Selectmen. We requested it before. They responded. My understanding was they were going to try to have the number. It's not our responsibility, I think, at this point, as much as it is theirs. Right? We did request it. And what they're telling us is that it appears that we will not have it afterwards. Now, there's a great deal writing on this as well, because remember, the state will not certify, recertify the 2010, nor certify the 2011 until they get the audited statements. And in every final closing that happens, there's many, many adjustments that come up that have to be done that you may not see during the course of the months, particularly if you haven't done that monthly reconciliations. And all my colleagues who have sat on that side, or, especially when you have people coming to you and you think everything's okay, and then you discover that things have been booked incorrectly, improperly. I know even on the first pass of the reports that we received, the postings hadn't all been done when they ran the reports. That's like accounting 101, but it did happen, and they came back and they had fixed the item. On an annual report, there always are adjustments. We know there's adjustments to the 2010. We're waiting for the auditor to come back and provide his explanation of the original 900 number that he put out. All right, and I imagine Jim Powers is not going to come until he feels comfortable in saying, this is the amount I can account for, this is what I can't account for, and why. All right, it's up to the selectmen to push those issues. We push as hard as we can push, Dick. I have no further way other than, I understand we can demand certain things, but those would probably require litigation, and I don't think we're at that point yet, because I think we're very, very close. And yes, it is very embarrassing to go into the town meeting without those numbers. But I think the citizens of the town are now very much aware, and I think that both the board and the TA are being held accountable. People want to know what's happening. So I think we've done part of our job. We've brought it to everybody's attention, and we're starting to make some progress. McDonald?
I'm not embarrassed that we don't have the information before town meeting. I think you're right. We've taken the proper steps to get the information, and we don't have it. And I think that's why our votes reflect exactly what's happened here. Because I think you might have seen a little bit of turnaround on some of those capital items had we had the information, or better information, other than 2 months. So, our job is to advise town meeting, and that's what we're doing. We don't have any financial information, so our advice is no advice. I'm not embarrassed to say that. Short of going in with the National Guard and confiscating computers and going in and trying to find the numbers. And how would we exactly find the numbers? Can we push buttons and find reports? I don't think that we're in a position to go in and get the information. It's just not there yet. So what else can we do?
Mr. Paulson?
Well, I appreciate the being collegial with the administration. No misunderstanding. But I've got to believe in my mind, and I hope we would all believe here in the town, that the administrator does have a ledger sheet or a report of some sort that shows what the budget was for each major item and how much we spent. I'm not saying to send the National Guard in. I'm saying that we have the responsibility, we have the right, quite frankly, but we have the responsibility to get that information. The town expects it of us, in my opinion. So, and some of these items, quite frankly, we did vote for them, even though we didn't have the information. It wasn't as if we voted against them all. That's not the case at all.
No, I was just agreeing, so.
No? I'm sorry, Mr. Gray.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm not at all sure what we can do, given that we have requested the information and didn't get it. I guess we could sue, but I'm not sure that'd be in the best interests of the town. We've certainly asked for it. I don't know how we can compel it. I feel a little bit embarrassed because, we are on the finance committee, and obviously that is a little embarrassing, but I'm more embarrassed for the town than I am for the finance committee, is the way I feel. Dick, I agree with you. I'm not
To me, it's more than a merit. I'm sorry.
Because I do want to interject also on this in one case, and I understand what you're saying as far as having the information to go through things. And I think we've done our due diligence. I think we've worked very hard at trying to understand a lot of this stuff. Also coming as part of the decision, I think we have to do as members of the Finance Committee, it's not just a numbers game as well. All right, I think we have clearly made known our dissatisfaction with the number situation as it relates to the Board of Selectmen and as it relates to the town accountant and as it relates to Powers and Sullivan. But Article 1, you look at what's on there, you look at the ambulance, you look at the school buses, etc. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm not a social liberal, but if we don't pass those items, the town administrator will not be punished. The Board of Selectmen will not be punished. It's the citizens of the town that are going to have to live with an ambulance that doesn't show up or a bus that breaks down on the way to school. So you can make decisions, you can take strong positions, which I think we have done in our write-ups, and then we can push forward into this coming year, especially in the budget process, and say that there will no longer be a repeat. We have proven with these first two reports it can be done, so there's no reason you shouldn't do it. Otherwise, when contracts come up for renewals, etc., things should seriously be considered. I think the TA has been judged. I think the Board of Selectmen will be judged based on what has occurred and what will occur going forward. And that, I yield the floor to you.
I've said enough on it. I think everybody knows how I feel.
Bonnie?
I understand the frustration, but I don't think at this point where the company is and the TAs are at this moment, that spitting out an end-of-year report for 2011 and handing it to us is going to make a lot of sense, okay? I want the full report, I want the full analysis, I want to know what's going on. I don't want just a bunch of figures and here you go, this is what we expended and this is what we budgeted, this is what we expended, why is it up and down, what's the story? I personally, I'm frustrated that it's not done yet, but I would like the whole report when it's finished and complete along with the analysis, and if I've got to wait for that, then I've got to wait for that.
I think you're also referring to the management letter, which
Yes.
points out what's been done against the material weaknesses
Exactly.
that have been identified, what continues to exist, and the demand for action going forward. Sam?
As disappointed as I am that we don't have that, I would have to say that I am delighted to have received the information on the last 2 months, July and August. It's certainly the first time that I have seen on this committee any financial reports at all. So it is clearly a major step in the right direction.
Speaking of major steps in the right direction, are we taking any proper steps when it comes to the town account?
Yes, I'm glad you asked.
Right under the bus.
I understand that we have a number, and I don't know what the number is, of applicants, and we are meeting at 1:30 tomorrow afternoon to review this. I managed to lose the resumes when I tried to print it, and I went over to the office, tried to pick them up this afternoon, and was unable to do so, but I will be there in the morning to pick them up to review them. So I don't know how many there are, but I do know that there are a number that have been received, and I have, obviously, since I haven't read them, I have no idea as to whether they're good applicants or not. So, but we are following up on this, and I would imagine I would hope by Monday I would know more.
And that is a subject that did come up Saturday. There are a number of towns that don't have accountants at this point. They're having trouble finding people that are willing to go into municipal accounting across the state. Well, also, if you look today at colleges, the courses they tell you these are the fields to go into. 10 years ago, it was definitely you wanted to be in data processing. All right, the last 5 that I've seen over the last almost a year are to go into financial planning and accounting. And we're talking real serious dollars for people coming out of school, particularly those with master's degrees. So,
one thing I should add to that is that there has been a feeling that we have to increase the salary level for the accountant, which I personally believe is correct. And I know that this is being looked into, but I don't know what the.
Well, we were asked to make a recommendation, right, correct?
I was asked, I guess informally, if the finance committee would make a recommendation on that. That is correct.
To which he immediately came to me and said, our job is not to advise the Board of Selectmen or the town administrators to advise the town. So that doesn't mean we wouldn't agree with anything that they came to us with. Pardon? Yes, Tom?
On the town accountant, is there a range? In other words, you've got an entry-level range and a lower and an upper range for the accountant, and when you're saying you're going to raise that, are you gonna raise it out of the range, or are you gonna stay within the range?
No, I would think, excuse me, please
Yes,
do.
review it.
Yes, there is a range. The range, I'm going by memory now, had an upper limit of 83,000. And the suggestion was that we go up a step, which would increase that range. And I can't tell you what the range would be if that decision was made. I can't tell you because I don't remember.
But it's from one particular GS step to another one, or not?
Correct.
So it's like a GS3 to a GS4, just as an example, something like
Yeah,
that.
yes, it's not that, but it would be a step up, yes.
Any other items for the one last item? New business. Sweat, did you say what to do? You're all set? Okay, thank you.
I just have an overall question.
Yes, ma'am.
As far as the motions, I know we were given the motions in the original mess here. Are we going to get a printout of the motions again, as far as?
I had asked if you could have them by tonight. I had sent Frank the most recent motions. I actually had an email today that had just the motions. And they're pretty much going to be what they're going to be, except for Article 1, Article 10. I believe Gary Cananzi's article will have, I move for further study, and then a study committee be formed, I believe is going to be his motion.
I
We're
guess
going to
the,
take the CPC articles together as a consensus, so that would be one motion. But I think what you have seen, they're pretty much, that's what the motions are going to be.
will I receive a copy before the weekend so I can send them out to
I am
everybody?
meeting with town council and Derek tomorrow, and I have repeatedly asked that you have them by today. Derek is waiting, like I said, I believe from DOR and bond council, and once those two come in, I believe you will get sent. I will push again for tomorrow, that you have them no later than tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening.
I have the set that she said. I could mail them out. She said she sent me a copy today. So I have what is current, but she just said there's at least 4 or 5 different corrections.
Well, that's
If you'd like, I can send them out Friday night when we have nothing, or we'll just have to wait till
my thing
Monday.
was, last time we did this, it was like there were corrections at the end, and I ended up with 5 copies of something before I sat down. And I don't wanna be wasting all that paper money too.
As long as we have a.
I believe that's why Derek hasn't set the final, because one thing we did find last year is, if you look at my notebook at home, I now have this many emails that have come through where changes have been made, and it changes, and all of a sudden you don't know what's the correct version.
Right.
So we have tried to make that simpler, not send out things so that you're gonna get the final, and you're not getting 2 or 3 different versions. In terms of what we did at the pre-town meeting, most of the motions, that's what the motions are gonna be, except for, like I said, Article number 1, Article number 10, we wanna just make sure that Article number 10 that DOR is okay, that it's coming out of the enterprise reserve retained earnings.
Restricted retained earnings.
Right.
Restricted retained, we want to make sure that's correct. So he didn't want to send it out till he had those two. Gary Cananzi submitted his motion last Thursday at the pre-town meeting, so we want to make sure we put that in so that you'll at least have it in your packet. And I think that those are going to be the only three significant changes other than what you had sent out.
Claire, I guess what it comes down to, we're scheduled for a 6:15 meeting. I'm gonna be there no matter what, all right? If we could have the motions as they're gonna be presented that night, which they would have to be, because it's gonna be a PowerPoint presentation, if we could have 9 copies of it, then I have it to give it to the members of the committee.
Like I said, I asked Derek Monday, Tuesday, and today.
Okay, no, I'm just
Yeah.
saying that's like.
You know, I really was pushing that you would have them for tonight.
Sort of like our financials.
All right, please, no more editorial
Which
comments.
is why I forwarded you what I did today, is what I had was the PowerPoint presentation, the first draft. I'm hoping that by tomorrow afternoon it will be finished and you will have them by tomorrow night. I can't promise that, but I am trying really hard to make that happen.
I'm okay with it. You know, I don't wanna print out one and then, oh, wait a minute, we changed this one, and then it was like again and again and again. You know, we can have them by the 6:15 Monday, a copy that's what's gonna be on the floor, now I'm good with that.
Bonnie, it's better than 6:45.
I know.
Done that before.
With regard to Article 3, I thought Rich Bowen made an instructive suggestion at the pre-town meeting, and if it requires an amendment following a motion, I just hope that we get on the same page as to who would be making that amendment. I mean, the Finance Committee gets to make the first amendments. My recommendation would be that the effective date should be the first full fiscal year, July 1, following approval by the state. That would create the least amount of chaos within the budgeting process, but I'll defer to the Finance Committee with respect to that, but I think we should be prepared to make an amendment to eliminate the confusion that a mid-fiscal year effective date would generate.
I think we could do that.
I was hoping Alan would be here just to run that by him, but I would like to see it as part of the motion, since we haven't really.
If we can do it as part of the
We could do it
motion,
as far as
even
the
better.
motion and put it in the motion, it would be even better, so
Then-
that we don't need an amendment.
That being the case, I will need a quorum that Monday night, because we'll have to pass on it, that we're going to make an amendment to that effect. What he's talking about is putting an effective date of July 1 on Article 3 versus leaving it wide open and everybody's trying to guess what it was supposed to be. It was that we introduce it into the new fiscal year and leave it alone for this year.
Yeah, it's a procedural matter because it becomes problematic for the moderator that if we leave it as it is, Mr. Andrews begins his budget next month for the next fiscal year. So if he doesn't build that split into this budget, and this gets passed, then we have a problem with the FY 2013 budget.
Okay?
So it,
We'll need a quorum Monday night. What time are you open today?
I'm sorry, FY13 or FY12?
FY13.
13.
FY 13, he'll be working on the FY 13 budget.
Right, but if it passes, it theoretically could have an effective date within FY12, is my point.
Yeah.
Most likely it would go to the legislature, it probably would not.
I'm not suggesting I know when the timing of the legislature is going to be, but if we don't have an effective date, let's say the legislature takes it up in February or March or whatever, it would presumably, that would mean that the effective date would be July 1 of 2012, which is fiscal year 2013.
Right,
That's
Correct.
right.
That's what we're saying. That's the
Okay.
date we'll put in.
But if they acted in March of 2012, and that was the effective date, that would create chaos for the FY12 budget, which
Absolutely,
we're already 3/4 of the way through.
absolutely.
That's why the amendment.
That's right.
Right, so when you said
Right.
213, I think we should be okay for FY 213. Yes?
If that's the effective.
No, because Mr. Andrews will be starting to put that budget together next month for FY 13.
Agreed, but if we,
So,
passed a motion that has an effective date of July 1 of the first full fiscal year, et cetera. If I was Mr. Andrews, I would assume that the legislature would act before July 1 of 2012, therefore he should budget accordingly. Wouldn't you? I mean, isn't that the prudent thing to do?
Well, if he's doing his budget in November, then he'd have to go back before April and redo that budget if it becomes effective. So that's,
I feel like we're not communicating.
Okay.
We're going to be doing a school budget. If it passes, we're going to anticipate that 50% of the meal tax will be available for fiscal year 2013's budget for the schools. So,
I understand.
right? So I would hope that we'd be on the same page with the town, and they would also be budgeting 50% of the meals tax for FY 213. I mean, that's just sort of normal prudence, assuming the legislature is going to act over the next 9 months or whatever it is.
That would be the case. The amendment would make anything passed by the legislature, if they went beyond July 1, retroactive to July 1. Otherwise.
That's a whole other issue.
Otherwise, it would become effective as of the date that they passed it. I don't know if it's a whole other issue. We passed the issue of sewer commissioners a year ago and still hasn't.
No, I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it's a whole other issue in that sense. I mean, once you're into a budget season, then if we budget it that way, yes, you could say retroactivity makes sense. If we haven't budgeted that way, then it's more problematic.
Oh, well, we would expect him to budget that way. I mean, we're just saying that we're trying to cover the legality.
Okay,
When it gets to the legislature, if they drag their feet, we want to make sure that we all, on July 1, said that's what.
But that retroactivity then has to be within the amendment. So we need to
No,
carefully.
it's just effective July 1.
Effective
No,
July 1.
yeah.
If I might,
July 1 is July 1.
Okay.
Or 2012, it's 2012, which is fiscal year.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Fine?
we had the very similar thing with the CEC, when it took so long for it to actually go through and pass. And it was the same thing, it went back to the beginning of the fiscal year. So it's, as long as, that's what the legislation says, and if we do the amendment that way, we should be perfectly fine. If it's for fiscal year 2013, then yeah, he should budget for that, and if and when it goes all the way through the legislation, God knows the effective date, then it would go back to that July.
Fine.
Anyone else have any other further new business that I've not been made aware of? The chair will entertain Mr. Gray's motion.
Second.
To adjourn.
Seconded by Mr. McDonald. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Excellent.